Hello and welcome all to today's tutoring session. So we are currently in the Coding for Young Minds coding lab in Mississauga, and thank you to all of those participants who are also joining us remotely as well. So my name is Arya Peruma, and today we're going to be looking at Java programming, but more specifically, a concept in object-oriented and modular programming called composition. So this topic and concept is really applicable for all grade 12 computer science courses, whether it be IB, AP, or ICS for you. In addition, thank you all so much for your suggestions and support. There were many requests for various coding topics and modular programming topics in Java. But since this topic of composition was frequently asked about and frequently requested, I'm going to be doing this tutoring session. I'm going to be covering and teaching this for everyone today. So, with saying this, I think we're going to get started on today's topic, which once again is composition. So essentially, this topic of composition is basically just building on our skills of object-oriented programming, which we already covered previously. So if we all remember before we actually covered the concept of inheritance. So with inheritance, we could essentially just create a parent class with all common attributes and methods, and then add a child class to inherit those same attributes from the parent class and just pass down information and attributes that way. So just to refresh your memories of this concept of inheritance and to give you an example, for example, if you have a parent class of fruits, child classes of the parent class fruits could include things like apples, oranges, kiwis, grapes, strawberries. So essentially the main category, which is the parent class of fruits, is there. And there's also kind of subcategories or subcategories of the parent class fruits, which are child classes. So apple, orange, grape would all be child classes of the parent class fruits. So basically kind of those tiny subcategories of the main category. And basically we had that main class and child classes, and we could just easily pass information down, information regarding the common attributes and methods that way. So essentially we could do that with inheritance. However, it is really important to recognize that not all objects are defined with this example, which I just mentioned. So they're not all defined with this parent-child kind of relationship. And I'll explain to you what this actually means. So, as I mentioned before with that fruit example, where we had that main category of fruits, and then we had subcategories or child classes of grape, orange, kiwis, apples, and we all had categories like that with that main category or parent class of fruits. So not every object is defined that way. For example, let's take parent class car. So we just have a car as our parent class. And as you all probably know, cars are kind of built of many components. So there's things like steering wheels, the brake pedal, the levers, there's many other buttons and other features of the car, the seats, and just everything that kind of builds and makes up this car. So essentially, unlike that fruit example, a steering wheel is not really a category of a car. It is a component of the car. So essentially, to reword that, a steering wheel is basically what creates the car. It's what makes a car a car. You can't really have a car without a steering wheel. Similarly, you can't really have a proper car without a gas pedal or brake pedal. So that's what it's saying here. So since the steering wheel is kind of like a component of a car, rather than it being a child class, a parent class car, we can't really use inheritance for this. And therefore, we need to use the concept which we're learning today, which is called composition. So essentially, the steering wheel is a component of the car, and therefore it would not be a child of the car class. But for example, if I had parent class of vehicles, things that fall in that parent class of vehicles would be things like trucks, cars, buses, motorbikes, because those are all categories of the main category vehicle. And similarly, if I was going to take this example with parent class car, child classes of the parent class car could be things like Honda, Audi, BMW, Ferrari, and other car brands, which are kind of categories of the type car because those are types of cars. So those would be considered the child classes, the brands I just described. And then the main category, main parent class would be of class car. But in this example, a steering wheel is not a category of a car. It can't be defined as a child class. It has to be part of the parent class car. So this is where this concept of composition is actually going to be coming into play for us. So since the steering wheel would be the child class of the parent class steering devices rather than the child class of parent class car, we can therefore just go ahead and say that inheritance is not an applicable method for this, because just as the steering wheel example states, steering wheel is what creates the car and what makes a car a car. So essentially, that's how we're going to kind of wrap this ideology around that. This is why we basically just need composition. And although inheritance is very useful, as you can see, not everything is defined with the relationship we used when doing inheritance. So basically, just to sum that all up, composition is just a way multiple terms can be grouped together efficiently. And we can use this ideology of composition to access attributes and methods of other classes without inheritance. And like I mentioned with that steering wheel example, we can access attributes and methods of parent class car with child class steering wheel, child class gas pedal, but we can't use inheritance since those are all technically part of the car and not categories of the type car. So in order to really solidify these concepts and kind of make it more clear for everyone here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually be showing everyone an example of some real life code of where we can actually use this idea of composition. I'll be explaining it to everyone, and I'll just be telling everyone how I've used composition in the code and how we can actually use it effectively in a proper way. So I'll just be switching over here, and hopefully everyone can see the code over here. So as you can see, the code is about this long. It's just basically some code using the object-oriented programming, a lot of concepts which we've covered previously, like attributes, just instantiating objects. But however, we're also going to use the concept of composition in this, and I'll just explain to everyone and be walking through this code with everyone as well. So first, in order to do that, let's look at this code step by step and kind of portion by portion. So we're just going to be focusing on this first, and I'll just comment the rest out so we can kind of get a better, cleaner focus on the actual part we are looking for. Okay, so essentially, as you can see, we have this part over here, which is kind of colorful, and that's what we want to bring our attention to right now. So first, before I actually get into this, I'll just tell everyone what this code is about. So this whole code, basically the objective is to describe components of a computer. Basically describe components of the computer and just use our basic knowledges of object-oriented programming and composition, which we're going to be learning today, to just understand the parts of the computer and see how we can pass down attributes and methods with these different components of a computer. So as you can see in the commented out code as well, there's also mouse and other kind of ideas surrounding a computer as well, which we're going to be looking more into. So we have this over here. First, we have this class, and as you can see, it's class named keyboard. So I've just named it keyboard, and as you know, a keyboard is a component of a computer. So a keyboard is not a category of a computer, but rather it is what makes a computer a computer. So basically, I just put a class of keyboard over here. And then what I've done is I've added two string attributes of language and brand. So I've just added two string attributes. And I'll just also comment everything out in writing, so we can also get a visual look at what I'm also explaining here as well. So just for your own reference and further understanding. So what I've basically done is, as you can see, I just put two attributes of this type string for the keyboard. One is language, which is going to be signifying the language of the keyboard, as well as the brand, which is obviously just the brand of our keyboard. So essentially, what I'm doing after this is, as you can see, I've created a constructor method over here, and basically, I've taken these two attributes values from the constructor method parameters. So I've made these two attributes over here. So I've just named language lang for a short form, and then brand. So basically, these are parameters for the constructor utilizing the attributes which I defined in the previous line. So basically, I'm just taking the attributes values from the constructor method parameter. And then I'm just taking it from the constructor method parameters. And then basically, as you can see, we actually looked at this keyword previously in our previous Java lesson and Java tutoring session. And basically, this keyword is basically defining that the fact that we are creating an objects here. So this is object-oriented programming. So that this keyword basically instantiating the attributes and creating objects with this keyword. So we are instantiating and creating the object. And we're doing the exact same thing in this line as well, because as you can see, these two lines are very similar, just with the different attributes. And then finally, what I did here is I actually created a new method, and I've named the method type something. It's a type void. That's the method return type of this. So it's a return type void, and it's called type something. And basically, the parameters I've passed in this method are of type string, and the parameter I passed is called message, or MSG for short. So essentially, all I'm doing is I'm just creating a method of type void called type something, and I've just created a method type void called type something, and given parameters of type string called MSG. So I've just named the parameter MSG, and it's of type string, as you can see. So now we want some actions to be performed in our methods. We don't just want it to be a blank method and that's it. We want the method to actually do something. So that's why, as you can see, I have a print statement over here, which actually prints the parameter. So I'm going to actually take the user's message value. So I'm going to let the user give us a message, and I'm going to let the user give us a message, and I'm just going to print that message the user gives us through the keyboard, which you have over here, because this is class keyboard. So we're just adding actions to our methods and printing the user's message. And that's essentially all that's happening in this kind of portion of code, which is colorful at the moment. Basically, we know that a keyboard is a component of a computer, so I've just created a class for that. So we can later go down to our main parent class of computer, and we could use our idea of composition to pass down attributes and methods efficiently. So now that we actually were able to get this, I'm actually going to be commenting this out so we can focus more of our attention on the um, next part of our code, which is going to be this over here. So now we can bring our attention to this over here, which is colorful. So this is another class that I've created. And if you were paying attention to the last one, you could actually clearly see that these two, this method, this class of keyboard as well as this class of mouse are like the exact same in terms of structure and syntax and just the overall structure and kind of the idea behind it is all the exact same idea. So basically I've done the exact same thing and I've added two string attributes, and I use brand and color for the mouse. And then I've also gone ahead and added two other attributes as well. So the great thing about this is that the possibilities are limitless. You can add as many attributes as you want and manipulate many things. So we have something called Boolean wireless. So Boolean is the type of the attribute. So we have added a Boolean type attribute of wireless. And basically, we all are probably aware, but I'll also reinforce that as well. Boolean basically means true or false. So that's basically what I've done here. I've given a Boolean value of wireless for the attributes. Basically, it will tell us if the mouse is wireless or not. So if it's true or false in terms of it being wireless. And then finally, I added a int type attribute of button amount. And this is exactly what it sounds like. It's a attribute of integer type, and basically it's called button amount because it will tell us how many buttons are on our mouse. And then I've just done the exact same thing as I did previously over here, and basically I will just put this over here because the idea and the structure is the exact same. So basically what I did is I'm basically taking the attribute values from the constructor method parameters, and as you can see I have a constructor once again of a constructor called mouse because mouse is the name of the class, as you can see over here. And I have this constructor called mouse, and I am basically just taking the attributes from the constructor method parameters and I'm just passing them through as parameters for the constructor based on the attributes which I defined earlier. So I have that brand, color, wireless, button amount, all attributes which I defined earlier. And then all I'm doing here is for the this dot brand equals brand, I'm just instantiating the attribute. So instantiating the attribute brand, in this case it's brand, it's instantiating the attribute brand using this keyword to create the object. And essentially, I am just creating the object this way by using this keyword. And as you can see, these three lines that follow are the exact same thing because I'm just taking those attributes which I had earlier and I'm just putting this dot color, this dot attribute equals that attribute there. So we can say the exact same thing for these lines as well. So this is basically saying that this brand, we're instantiating the attribute color over here. So we're instantiating the attribute color. Over here, we're instantiating the attribute wireless. And over here, we are instantiating the attribute button amount. So essentially, we're just instantiating the attributes to create these as objects using the this keyword. And then once again, as we saw over here, just creating another method to perform some actions. So at this time, creating a method of type void. So I'm creating a method of type void called details. So I'm just going to call it details to print the details of our mouse over here. And essentially, I'm just going to do that and going to perform some actions in our method. So I'm going to perform actions in the method and printing action. So basically, as you can see over here, essentially we have this method called details, and in our details method we're just going to print out the details of the mouse. In this case I've just written this is your mouse because those are just all I wanted to say in terms of the details. But of course code is always great because it's manipulable and you can change it to accommodate for various amounts of factors, and you can say you can type whatever you want. You can create as many attributes as you want. It's all kind of up to you and in terms of your creativity and how you want to go about your code. So essentially what we're doing here is I'm just saying this is your mouse, and I'm just performing those actions that way. And finally, now we're actually going to be moving on to our next sector of the code. And now we're actually getting pretty close to the part where we're going to be looking at how we're going to finally use the idea of composition to actually be able to implement this effectively in our code. Because as you can see, we have classes of keyboard and mouse, which are what make up the computer. They're part of the public class computer. So we're actually going to use composition over here in the main method in order to actually be able to pass down information in terms of the methods and attributes for each class. So we're just going to be looking at that right now. So I've commented this part out, and we're just going to now bring our attention to this sector over here. So essentially, as you can see, I have named it public class computer. So that's because, as I mentioned previously, we're trying to, our objective is kind of to describe the components of a computer, and we're trying to allow us to pass attributes and methods between these as well. And essentially, through actually being able to accomplish that, what we have to do is we have to put our main class of computer, which I've given it public class computer, and I've also added our attributes, which we've mentioned before. So basically, I've added an attribute of keyboard. So I've added this attribute of keyboard of type keyboard. So you may be wondering, this type I've given it over here is not really a real data type that is used in coding. But however, since we already instantiated and we already declared our classes above of keyboard and mouse, we can actually use keyboard and mouse as the actual data types in this case. So we can actually make those the types of the attributes. So I've also done the exact same thing over here, and I've just added an attribute of mouse this time of type mouse. And essentially, as you can see, the structure is actually pretty much the same as class mouse and class keyboard. However, now we're just, instead of using things like string, boolean, integers as our data types, we're actually using the names of the classes as kind of to act as our data types, since we already declared the classes above. And if anyone was wondering here, the reason why there is a red line underneath is because I've just commented the previous out, so it doesn't recognize the variables which I instantiated or the attributes which I instantiated and declared above because they're commented out. But if I took the comments out, it would be able to recognize those, and you can see that red line actually will go away. So I'll just put this back so we can actually make it more clear what aspect of the code we're talking about right now. And we're actually going to now look at the constructor. So as you can see, the actual structure is very similar, but we're just going to look at the constructor method right now. And we're just going to do the exact same thing. So we're just going to take the attributes values from the constructor method parameters. And I'll just put this here. So we're going to take the attributes values from the constructor method parameters, and the parameters are going to be keyboard and mouse, because those are the attributes which I declared above. And then finally, we're going to just create the object. So creating the object keyboard, and then creating the object mouse. And the reason why, and I didn't use this keyword here, because as you can see, I use this over here, I use this over here. And we could actually use this over here too, but the reason I didn't is because the names are different, because over here I put underscore keyboard. So I just said keyboard is equal to underscore keyboard. Whereas over here, I put string brand, I just put string brand. So I put this dot brand is equal to brand, and since the variable names are the exact same, you have to put this dot to create the object and differentiate and make sure the code knows that these are actually two different things that you're talking about. So essentially, now what we're actually going to do is we're actually going to actually have a good look at this, and we're going to also it's also important to recognize, everyone, that we also the structure overall is like kind of the exact same thing as before. So structure remains very similar, and especially in this terms of composition, this concept of composition, you can actually keep the structure the same. It's just the passing of the variables, passing of the methods, passing of the attributes, which we need to be careful of and which we need to be mindful of when we're doing that part in the main method. So we'll actually get to that right now, and I will just comment this out so we can take a look at that. Okay, so I'm currently looking at the chat right now, and here is actually a question from someone who is currently joining us remotely today for this tutoring session. So I'll just read it out to everyone. So the question asked was, why can't we just use inheritance to inherit from multiple classes instead of composition? So, so this is actually a really good question, and actually explain why right now. Explain why that's not really possible right now. So I kind of already touched base on that a bit when I was going over the mouse and keyboard classes and why we had to pass those with composition. But I'll also go ahead and I'll provide an example right now, and I'll explain what this question is asking as well for those who need more clarification on that. So, so let's take a look at this. Okay, so I'm just going to comment this whole code out and start over here. We're just going to just start from here, and I'll just give everyone an example of what this is actually asking. So let's say that I just had a class of parent. I'm just going to name it parent1. So class of parent1, it's just a class, and we're going to have a method called fun of type void. So or let's actually name it run, void run, and we're just going to do that over here. And then for our actions, we're just going to do system.out.print ln, and we're just going to print out, let's just print out parent class 1, and then our semicolon at the end to finish off the print statement. So this is the first class which I created. It's called parent1. It has a method of run, and I'm just going to be putting some actions inside that method and just going to print parent class 1. And similarly, let's create a second parent class over here. I'm just going to name it class parent 2 this time. And I'm just going to say void run, and I'm just going to do the exact same thing and do system dot out dot print parent class 2. And essentially just close that off. And then basically, as you can see, we have two methods here. And just to reiterate the question once again is, why can't we just use inheritance to inherit from multiple classes instead of composition? So what we're actually having here is multiple classes. I have parent 1, parent 2. So these are multiple classes that we have over here. And now we definitely need our main class as well. So let's just go ahead and let's see what happens if we try to use inheritance. So what we had over here is composition, because as you saw, there was no extends keyword. But right now, let's just use inheritance with these two parent classes. So I'm just going to say class example, let's name it example, extends. Remember, that is the keyword for inheritance. It extends parent 1 and parent 2. And essentially, we're going to now have a main method. So public static void main, and then string, and then the args. And then finally, we're going to actually create the object. So let's say example class, or it's not even a class, example, let's just say example E, because let's just give it a letter for our object is equal to new example. And then essentially now we're just going to call the actual method. So we're just going to say e.run and then calling that method. And then we're just going to take a look at this. So this is basically what the question was asking. Why can't we do this? So this code I've written right now, just asking why can't we do what I've written right now? Why do we have to take the other route and use composition instead of just using this extends keyword and using inheritance? So as you can see already, when I've used this, there's a huge red line underneath. And just for some more context, let's go and look at what it says if I hover over it. So let's see what it says the error is. So it says syntax error on tokens, record header name expected instead. So this may sound a bit daunting or confusing at first, but I will just break this down for you what this means. So essentially the error that's happening here is that this object or this class example over here is inheriting from multiple classes. So it's not supporting a multiple inheritance because of the fact that these two are kind of in that same category as example. And basically what I'm doing is I'm just saying that we can use inheritance to extend these two classes to each other and use this main example parent class to pass down attributes and methods. But obviously, it's not working that way, and that's because we can't just go ahead and use multiple inheritance as well like that, because Java is not going to be able to support that. And basically, this problem is actually occurring when there's methods with the same signature or um, same method type in both of the classes. So because of that, because it's void run here and void run here, it's the exact same, the compiler or the runner it can't determine at all. It can't tell which class's method needs to be called. So as you can see, I've called method run over here, but I have run here, two separate classes, which are supposed to be in the same category, like that steering wheel and car example. But they're that's not what we're saying right now in the code. So um, that's exactly why we can't do it, because it doesn't know which one to take and run, because they're the exact same in um, a main parent class, which the other classes are of the same category. And that's why we can't do this multiple inheritance thing, because this just simply is not an accepted format in Java. So hopefully that answered your question. And that was a really good question that you asked. Um, but now we're going to move on to covering the rest of our code and how finally we've actually used the idea of composition. So as you can see over here, we have public static void main. That's just our main method, and that's where all of the composition related activities need to be engaged. So basically I added the main method in our class computers, and I just created objects of the classes keyboard and mouse, because keyboard and mouse were the two classes we had. So we have to create objects of those, and inside the objects just passed characteristics of each one. So for the new keyboard, I've said the language is English and the brand is Apple, because over here I asked for language and brand for the attributes, and over here in the mouse I've just given it values of Logitech, which is the brand, which I asked for over here, black, which is a color, which I asked for over here, true, which is the Boolean value I asked for over here in wireless, and 4, which is the amount of buttons that the mouse has, which falls under the int button amount um, attribute, which I filled out over there. So essentially, what we actually did with this is with these objects that we've created, we're actually now going to create a central object of class computer. So we just create a central object of class computer, and by using composition to attach the keyboard and the mouse like this, we're able to avoid this inheritance idea, because there are keyboard and mouse are parts of the computer, they're not subcategories of computer. We're able to actually easily um, figure this out, and we're actually easily allowed to be able to create efficient objects of the computer class. So basically, we have this computer object over here, and basically it has my keyboard and my mouse, because we gave the class computer attributes of keyboard and mouse. And then finally, to sum this all up, we have to, of course, call the methods. We have to call type something, which is the method which I had over here, and we have to also call details, which is the method I had over here in the mouse class. So only after we call these methods will something actually happen. So now what we'll actually do is I'll remove all of these comments so we can get a better look at the overall code. And essentially, we'll just move this. And as you can see, it's just back to normal now without those comments. And then this is basically how we can use composition in programming. As you can see, we had mouse and keyboard, which are part of the computer category, and because of that, we're able to use composition instead of inheritance. Because as I showed with the other example, inheritance is not going to work with that. So we have to use composition in order to effectively pass methods and attributes down between classes. So essentially, that's just the main idea of composition. And now that we actually have a real life example in code, let's actually go back here. So essentially, just to sum everything up, composition is a technique where we can access classes as attributes of other classes. And we can also do this without inheritance. As I mentioned many times throughout this tutoring session, it's really easy to do this without inheritance because, of course, inheritance is not going to work because we don't have a child class and parent class. We have classes which are part of the main category. That's why we need composition over here. And in conclusion, we can't use inheritance for all relationships, is what we learned today. And we also learned how to effectively use composition in our code. So this actually concludes today's tutoring session. Thanks everyone for joining, whether it be live here at the coding lab or virtually online remotely. Thank you everyone for joining me today. Um, so I have definitely received all your other requests as well for new, more new and interesting Java webinar and Java tutoring topics, and I will definitely be looking at those and covering those as well. And just thank you everyone for coming today. And once again, for those of you who are still in the process of learning more of the basics of Java, I'm also simultaneously doing live webinars, and the next session will be held on December 5th. So please do check out our website for more details on that. So thank you everyone so much once again for attending today's tutoring session. I really do appreciate it. Thank you so much for your support as well. Um, and I definitely do hope to see everyone in a future tutoring session too. Thank you so much and have a great day.